welcome to India Today Explains, our weekly show where we decode for you some of the big headlines of the week. I'm Akshita Nandagopal, and on the show today, we'll lead with a big talking point over Hindenburg Research shutting shop. So we'll tell you all about the organization and why it's always been in the news. We also put the focus on the population debate as Andhra Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu has proposed a legislation to bar those with less than 2 children from contesting in local polls. Also on the show, we explain to you why ISRO's satellite docking success is so crucial to future space missions. And finally, in international news, we break down why there's such a long gap between an election result and the swearing-in ceremony of a president in America. Let's get started. It was in January 2023 that Hindenburg Research hit the headlines in India after making allegations of stock manipulation and accounting fraud against the Adani Group. Now, 2 years later, the controversial US-based short seller has decided to cease operations. The closure has raised questions about the firm's practices, its impact on markets, and the possible reasons behind the sudden move. But first, let's begin with the basics. Let's tell you what exactly Hindenburg Research was. Founded in 2017, Hindenburg Research's website says it specializes in forensic financial research, which analyzes equity, credit, and derivatives. The firm has just 11 employees. It rose to fame after publishing reports accusing top financial entities in India and abroad of financial wrongdoings and fraud. So let's tell you about the controversy in India. What did Hindenburg allege about the Adani Group? On January 24, 2023, Hindenburg Research published a report accusing the Adani Group of pulling the largest con in corporate history. These are the exact words they used. It accused the Adani Group of fraud, of brazen stock price manipulation. Following the release of the report, Adani Group stocks tanked up to 10% the next day and ended the day with a market cap erosion of 96,672 crore rupees. However, the firm's financial health has bounced back since. So now, why is Hindenburg Research shutting down? There was a note that was issued by founder Nate Anderson, which detailed the reasons for shutting down Hindenburg, saying that the firm had achieved its goals and that it was time to move on. He said, and I quote, "The intensity and focus has come at the cost of missing a lot of the rest of the world and the people I care about. I now view Hindenburg as a chapter in my life, not a central thing that defines me." Founded with little money and no traditional finance background, Anderson described Hindenburg's journey as both fulfilling and challenging. But what's with the timing? Is there more than what meets the eye here? Well, recently, Hindenburg had begun to attract allegations of its own with regards to its links with George Soros, who had made no secret of his opposition to the BJP government in India. So is there a link? In February 2023, right after Hindenburg's report on Adani, George Soros, while addressing the Munich Security Conference, spoke of the alleged stock sell-off of Adani Group companies mentioned in the Hindenburg Research report. He termed Prime Minister Modi as no Democrat and said the Adani affair could potentially lead to a resurgence of democracy in India. Listen to what he said.
India, Modi and business tycoon Adani are close allies. Their fate is intertwined. Adani Enterprises tried to raise funds in the stock market but failed. Adani is accused of stock manipulation and his stock collapsed like a house of cards. Modi is silent on the subject, but he will have to answer questions from foreign investors and in Parliament. This will significantly weaken Modi's stranglehold on India's federal government and open the door to push for much-needed institutional reforms. I may be naive, but I expect a democratic revival in India.
And then months later, in August 2023, Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, the OCCRP, an organization funded by the likes of George Soros, alleged millions of dollars were invested in some publicly traded stocks of Adani Group via opaque Mauritius funds that obscured involvement of alleged business partners of the Adani family. These were the exact allegations they put forth. So again, that link came to the fore and questions were raised. And now the announcement of the closure by Nate Anderson, the founder of Hindenburg Research, came just days before Donald Trump's inauguration as the new US president. The new Trump government is likely to probe many of the cases initiated by the US Department of Justice, including the Adani case. And a possible SEBI probe would have put Hindenburg Research also under the scanner. So is that why they shut down now? Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu has announced a new policy proposal aimed at encouraging families to have more children, stating that individuals will only be eligible to contest elections for local body positions if they have more than 2 kids. So let's tell you why he is deciding to take this step. First up, let's talk about the raging debate over whether India's population numbers are dwindling. RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat has sparked a discourse over this now by urging couples to have 3+ children and boost fertility rates. Is India dealing with a population crisis? Is there an urgent need to boost fertility rates in the country? Many politicians, some think tanks certainly think so. But we now break down for you India's demographic and how other countries compare. Let's begin with a look at India's population numbers. India has the largest population in the world with 142.86 crore people. This is as of December 2nd, 2024. We've used Worldometer's details of the latest UN, the United Nations data. Now, this number is roughly 17.78% of the world's population. India overtook China as the world's most populous country in 2024, and our numbers are only growing. So I know what you're thinking. If we're the most populous country in the world, how can there be any sort of population crisis? The answer lies in the breakdown of the population. The median or the average age in India is about 28 years right now. But with fertility rates going down, the concern is over India not having a young population, a young demographic in the years to come. From a high of 6.18 children per woman in 1950, the fertility rate as of 2022 is 2.01. It's been going down every year as per this graph. So how is fertility rate measured? I'll just quickly explain that for you. It's measured as on an average how many births per woman. So when we say 2.01 is the fertility rate right now in 2022, that's the average number of births per woman, or essentially that most women are having 2 children. Let's tell you now about the states with the lowest fertility rate. On the top of the list is Punjab, then West Bengal, and that's followed by all the southern states, Maharashtra too, which is why there's a constant debate in the south on the fertility rate and the need to have more children. The states with the highest fertility rate are Bihar, Meghalaya, Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand and Manipur. Now let's talk about how India compares to other countries. Keep in mind for that the number I told you earlier of India's fertility rate currently, which is 2.01 as of 2022. The country with the lowest fertility rate is South Korea, which has some of the lowest fertility and even marriage levels in the world. South Korea's fertility level as of 2022 was just 0.78. The South Korean government, therefore, is offering financial schemes, housing assistance, and a whole lot of SOPs, essentially to encourage people to get married and to have children. What about China? China's fertility rate is lesser than India. It's at 1.18 births per woman as of 2022, which is what's prompted a 3-child policy in China. And that's because China's population is aging faster than any other country. Historically, developed countries have significantly lower fertility rates. It's generally connected with greater wealth, also education, urbanization, and several such factors. And in least developed countries, fertility rates tend to be higher, which is why you'll see fertility rates higher in many countries in Africa. India is also following that trend, higher fertility rate earlier. With development, with education and urbanization, fertility rate is dropping. But does India have measures to tackle this dropping fertility rate? The answer is no. Quite the contrary, in fact. India has taken several measures for population control and for family planning. There are programs like the Mission Parivar Vikas, which focus on ensuring contraceptives are available in even the most rural parts of the country. And then there's also the two-child policy, which was adopted by 13 states in the country. We're talking about years ago. Essentially, what's a two-child policy? Families which had more than 2 children would not be able to contest local body polls, would even lose out on some government scheme benefits. In the last few years, however, many states have actually rescinded the two-child policy, keeping in mind the drop in fertility rates. The most recent state to have scrapped the policy is Andhra Pradesh. So is there a need to press the panic button like other countries have? The projection is that the fertility rate in India will fall to 1.29 by 2050. Now, I know what you're thinking. Many countries have that fertility rate currently, so it can't be that bad. The reality is what I mentioned earlier, that it isn't about numbers, but about an aging population and ensuring that India has a young, vibrant population. ISRO has achieved another milestone, this time successfully docking 2 SpaceX satellites in space. So why is this a crucial maneuver? How does it help future missions? Let's break all that down and more. Let's first explain to you what we mean by docking satellites. It's essentially 2 satellites merging into one, with both getting attached to each other in space. It's a tough and challenging operation, since these satellites are about the size of large refrigerators, if you will, or as per ISRO, that's about the size. The 2 satellites, Target and Chaser, latched onto each other at about 9 a.m. on January 16th. These 2 satellites were actually launched by the PSLV C-60 on December 30th just to conduct this maneuver. And now with the successful docking, the 2 satellites will be treated as a single object. This mission was called SpaceX, standing for Space Docking Experiment. There are 24 payloads that these satellites are carrying, and interestingly also had seeds which germinated within 4 days of the mission's launch. Remember, ISRO actually attempted this docking experiment twice in the last few weeks with these very satellites, but was inadvertently delayed due to one reason or another, which did get a lot of us nervous, but all's well that ends well. So with this feat, ISRO has now added another feather to its cap and has joined an elite group of just 3 other nations to successfully dock satellites in space: United States, Russia and China. These are the only 3 that have managed to dock satellites in space, and now India too is in that list thanks to our ISRO scientists. So why is this maneuver crucial? What do we gain from having performed this tricky docking in space? Essentially, this SpaceX mission success was crucial to determine the success of many other operations by ISRO, including Chandrayaan-4, which is the mission to bring back soil from the moon to Earth for research, for Gaganyaan, the mission to send our men to space, for a mission to also land astronauts on the moon, and also for setting up a space station. Docking is crucial for space station assembly, that is to get modules together and build the station in orbit. It's also important for any crewed missions, because to transport crew and supplies you need docking to take place. Lunar exploration to land and return spacecraft Chandrayaan-4, which I referred to, is something that's possible only once you can successfully dock. Interplanetary travel also, because again docking tech is needed for such complex missions, and even for robotic exploration. More than 2 months after he was elected to be the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump is finally set to be officially sworn in on January 20th. But if the result became clear in November 2024, why does so much time elapse between the election and the inauguration ceremony in America? When an incumbent president is defeated, the 2.5 months between an election and the official inauguration is sometimes referred to as the lame duck period. This is the period where the outgoing and incoming presidents are actually meant to work together in sync to ensure peaceful transition and transfer of power. But it's a convention, let's be honest, that's often ignored. It's also the final chance for the outgoing president to implement the final actions of their premiership. In most democracies, new leaders take charge quickly once election results are announced. But in the United States, things work a little differently, with an almost 11-week transition period. For over a century, America actually waited right up until March to inaugurate its president, potentially leaving an administration that was voted out in charge for another 4 months. That's a lot of time. Now that changed in 1933 when the inauguration day was moved from March 4th to January 20th. So that amount of time, that lame duck period that we refer to, was reduced. That gap is reduced, yes, but it's still very much there. So why is it there? Let's run you through the reasons behind this November to January gap. First is the Electoral College. Unlike most other countries, US presidents are not elected by a majority population vote, but by electors from the Electoral College. So when citizens vote in the presidential election in America, they're not actually voting for the president, but rather to instruct the state's electors which presidential candidate to endorse to pick. The Electoral College is an intermediary body formally electing the president and the vice president. And it's in mid-December that the Electoral College meets in each state to go ahead and officially cast votes for president and vice president. So there you have already a delay of a few weeks. And then you have the certification, which happens in early January. The Congress convenes to count, certify the electoral votes, officially confirming the election results before the inauguration. So this process provides a formal mechanism to verify the vote and therefore an additional layer of credibility to the outcome. This time the Congress met on January 6th to count the electoral votes they've received from the 50 US states and of course the District of Columbia. The incumbent vice president presides over the certification and then makes the announcement of the new president. Another reason, the period between the election and the inauguration also provides time for legal and procedural safeguards. We're talking about recounts, we're talking about resolution of any potential disputes. And then there's the transition planning. So this period essentially between November to January is crucial for also the president-elect, who must assemble a team, must nominate cabinet members and begin formulating key policies. This period allows the incoming administration to prepare for governance, helping to ensure that they're ready to address national and international responsibilities immediately after taking office, that they hit the ground running. So it gives the new administration time to prepare the groundwork for their term, like we saw with Trump also, who during this transition period kept making announcements over who will be a part of his team. And that's all we have time for in this edition of India Today Explains. Thanks very much for tuning in. I'll see you next week with the top stories that we will be tracking. Thanks very much. Have a great day ahead.